Have you ever wondered why some of history's most brilliant minds struggled in traditional classrooms? Research shows a surprising pattern. Students who excel at following rules and complying often struggle to innovate later in life. A 2014 University of Pennsylvania study found that nonconformists were 27% more likely to become entrepreneurs than their rule-abiding peers. In fact, the very students receiving the highest praise were statistically the least likely to disrupt industries or create groundbreaking solutions. This raises a fascinating question, one that Machiavelli would instantly pick up on. If our education system were truly designed to nurture independent thinkers and future leaders, wouldn't this outcome be considered disastrous? Or perhaps it's working exactly as planned. Machiavelli's words from The Prince: "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are," capture the essence of what we'll explore today. The hidden purpose behind modern education systems and how they shape us in ways that Machiavelli himself would recognize as tools of control. Machiavelli understood that the most effective forms of control don't appear as control at all. As he wrote, "The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar." The brilliance of modern education lies not in its obvious restrictions, but in how it subtly shapes how we think, all while appearing to expand our minds. Consider how brilliantly the system applies Machiavelli's principle that it's better to be feared than loved. But fear works best when disguised as care. Our education system doesn't subjugate us through obvious force, but through subtle mechanisms that shape how students view themselves and their abilities. Before we continue, I want to be clear. This isn't an attack on teachers. Most educators enter the profession with genuine passion and care for their students. What we're examining here is the system itself, its historical roots, its structural design, and its hidden purposes that Machiavelli would immediately identify as tools of power maintenance. The modern education system wasn't created by educators or child development experts. It was designed by industrialists in the late 19th and early 20th centuries who needed a workforce with specific characteristics. Factory owners didn't need free thinkers. They needed reliable workers who would arrive on time, follow orders without question, and accept hierarchical authority. Charles Eliot, president of Harvard University, made this explicit in 1905. "We want one class of persons to have a liberal education, and we want another class of persons, a much larger class of necessity, to forego the privilege of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks." This two-tiered approach perfectly mirrors Machiavelli's idea of power, where there are those who rule and those who serve. The education system creates this divide while maintaining the illusion of meritocracy. Finland's education system shows that alternatives are possible. It consistently ranks among the world's best, emphasizing student autonomy, minimal standardized testing, and play-based learning. But, as Machiavelli would point out, what serves power isn't always what serves the people. As he wrote, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions." Education expertly applies this insight through arbitrary rules that have nothing to do with learning. Rules like prohibitions against chewing gum, strict dress codes, and walking on specific sides of hallways. These rules normalize following directives without question. Studies show that children obey rules they don't understand, mistaking authority for morality. For instance, adolescents often defer to adults, even when the rules make no sense. Machiavelli would see this as brilliant conditioning. As he advised rulers, subjects must be kept content, not through freedom, but through the illusion of order and purpose. By training children to follow rules without understanding their purpose, education creates adults who are psychologically conditioned to comply, even when those regulations are against their own interests. Contrast this with Sugata Mitra's hole-in-the-wall experiments in India, which demonstrated that children with minimal guidance could teach themselves complex computer skills through curiosity-driven exploration. When given the freedom to learn naturally, children showed remarkable self-organization and critical thinking, the very qualities Machiavelli would warn rulers to suppress in populations they wish to control. This educational framework also reinforces another powerful tool: dependency on external validation. From gold stars to grade point averages, from teacher approval to standardized test scores, students are trained to measure their worth based on others' assessments. As Machiavelli noted, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand because it belongs to everybody to see you, but few to come in touch with you. External validation breeds adults who doubt their own judgment, constantly seeking approval from authority figures. When your sense of value depends on others' assessments, you become easier to influence through simple approval mechanisms. Adults raised on external validation often prioritize praise over purpose. A 2020 study linked academic perfectionism to workplace anxiety and risk aversion, showing that the need for external validation cultivated in school directly impacts adult economic decisions and bargaining power. Exactly the outcome Machiavelli would design to create compliant citizens. Montessori education, which emphasizes self-directed learning and intrinsic motivation, stands as a compelling counterpoint to this trap. It has produced a disproportionate number of creative innovators. Google's Larry Page and Sergey Brin, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales all attended Montessori schools. Beyond discipline and validation, traditional education employs another method of control: knowledge fragmentation. By dividing learning into isolated subjects, education makes it difficult to understand systems as a whole. This fragmentation serves as intellectual disarmament, preventing citizens from recognizing patterns of power or developing comprehensive solutions to complex problems. Machiavelli's advice to rulers to divide and conquer is perfectly reflected in how education promotes competition. The fear of failure further limits potential, creating people who are terrified of being wrong and avoid risks. Risk-averse people rarely challenge systems or create disruptive alternatives. This disconnect explains why many transformative thinkers, like Richard Branson and Steve Jobs, struggled in traditional educational settings. These innovators managed to break free from the constraints of arbitrary discipline, external validation, and fragmented knowledge, precisely the mechanisms Machiavelli would identify as tools of control. While much of traditional education may limit certain aspects of development, Machiavelli himself would recognize that proper education is essential for those who wish to lead. In The Prince, he emphasizes the importance of studying history. He writes, "Wise men say, and not without reason, that whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past, for human events ever resemble those of preceding times." Education that focuses on historical case studies, political strategy, and power dynamics can cultivate leaders with a deep understanding of human nature and societal forces. The most effective leaders have often been students of history, able to apply past lessons to present challenges. Winston Churchill's extensive knowledge of history informed his decisions during World War II, just as figures like Angela Merkel have drawn on history to navigate modern issues. Military academies and certain leadership programs deliberately create challenging conditions, understanding that leadership capabilities are forged through obstacles, not comfort. Machiavelli is often misunderstood as advocating pure ruthlessness. A careful reading of his work reveals that effective leadership requires deep understanding of human psychology. As he wrote, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear." Education that develops emotional intelligence, the ability to read others and manage relationships, creates leaders who can navigate complex human dynamics. The key question is, does education serve to limit potential, or does it develop it fully? Does it create followers or leaders? The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must be both to survive. Alternative education models like big picture learning demonstrate this approach in practice, where students spend substantial time on internships connected to their interests. This real-world engagement drives academic success and fosters curiosity. These alternatives prove that education can be rigorous, creative, and engaging, something Machiavelli would recognize as liberating rather than limiting. In the end, the greatest act of resistance against systems designed to limit us is to awaken that potential in others. True power comes not from blind obedience to external systems, but from the ability to think for yourself. It's the one skill they can never take away from you, and the one skill Machiavelli himself would applaud. If this video made you think, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of power and the hidden forces shaping our world.